Hello and welcome to the Young Entrepreneurs Syndicate podcast. I'm here with Rod Kuntz and I'm Jim Riley. Thanks for tuning in today. Rod, what's going on?
I'll tell you what, every day is a wonderful day. I made a mention again. Somebody asked me how I was yesterday at school, and I said, well, if I was any better, they would have to name a galaxy after me.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Star's not good enough. That's bold, right?
Now you're blowing smoke. I'm glad you mentioned school, though. You know, I've enjoyed the process of teaching a class. We're adjunct professors over at Stillwater High School, and teaching entrepreneurism and business leadership has been a great time for me. I know you've enjoyed it as well. Any quick highlights you want to mention?
Yeah, I'll encapsulate it by first saying when I was in school, I didn't like school.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, hate might be a strong word, but I disliked school. Every year when we went back in the fall, I dreaded it. I hated it from the time I was in grade school on. And I was a good student. I performed well. I was integrated. I got along with teachers and all that kind of stuff, but I did not like school. When I was in college, Jim, I had a shirt and it was written with crayon, a T-shirt. It looked like a little kid wrote it in maybe first grade, and it said, "School is okay, but kids like to play outside."
Nice.
And that was my favorite T-shirt, and I wore it all the time while I was in college. But I didn't like school. So now that we're teaching in school, I definitely want to make sure that I'm reaching the kids that might not want to be there.
Yeah.
That's my big takeaway is I want to give what I didn't get. I want to remove obstacles that were there for me. And I know they're the same obstacles. School's the same. It hasn't changed in 40 years.
Yeah. Or more. It's a great point. What I'm enjoying is the realization that we're giving these students something that most of us didn't get in school. And that's how to be an entrepreneur, how to run a business. And, I just had a conversation with a retiree today. He said, yeah, one of the things that kids don't even know how to do is fill out an application these days. I said, funny, you mentioned that. That's our first project in class is filling out an application. And I said, surprisingly, most of them did a terrible job. So you're right on the money. And This isn't anything against our students. The point is that they're not taught how to do these things in an appropriate way. And I was additionally baffled. And if you're one of my students and you're listening to this, please pay attention again. Rod, don't you find it interesting that when given the opportunity to have some extra credit by doing a resume or a cover letter, that nobody did it? They just did the basic. I was astounded. Me too.
I was astounded. Right.
Yeah.
And it's such a simple ask, or not even an ask. It's just, you could do this and boom, you're over the fence.
Yeah. Yeah. Zero. I think we have a lot of work to do as adjunct professors, as leaders, as parents nationally and leaders nationally and internationally. We have a lot of work to do with our youth of tomorrow. And I want to encourage you, if you're listening, to give our young adults a little bit more time to learn, tell them the stories, give them the whys, and let's help educate them on those things.
One of the students, speaking of this, he asked if he could leave class early. He wanted to go to the office and talk to somebody about something. And I had just let somebody else go to the bathroom, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, you're young adults. You shouldn't have to raise your hand and ask to use the bathroom. Mm-hmm. We know when we can't hold it anymore. We know when we need to go, right? And so I give him that respect. And he said, well, can I go to the office? I need to do this stuff. And I said, no, you can't. And he said, well, why not? And I said, I'll give you a reason why not. Because that's something you could have done before class, and you can certainly do it after class, but not now. This isn't a bodily function. This isn't something you naturally. He said, I appreciate you explaining your reason.
Huh.
And it was like,
that's great.
And that's what I think. Even if it's the job application, you need a reason why they need to fill it out this way, and why they can't leave blanks, and why they don't do it sloppily. And when they're asking for references, you come up with references. You don't just put one and leave the rest blank. Figure it out, right? And they just need to understand why.
It's interesting. My wife emulated that this morning with our kids. We were talking about our Senator Fuller here in town, and he's got some legislation coming up, and my wife and I were discussing it. The kids go, "What does that mean?" And trust me, this one was way over their head. Right. And I looked at her and I just, kind of continued on. I said, well, it's a pretty big issue, nationally. There'd be a lot of talk about it. And, I gave them a little bit of the why. And my wife stops and she says, well, what that means. And she went on to explain it in detail for a younger audience. And I just was looking at her like, you know what? I'm so glad you did that, because there's no reason why we shouldn't stop and educate our children on the things that are important to us and to others and what's going on, and realize that they probably will understand if we take the time to explain it to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they're smarter than we give them credit for.
Oh yeah.
They absolutely are smarter than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
And
well, that's taking us right into today's topic, which is leadership. And I know that you're a big fan of this discussion or these topics because we've had many of them. It's in your book, Warpath Alliance. I touch on it just a little bit in my Freedom to Say Yes book, but I know this is a sweet spot for you. I think a good place to start in my mind is that I believe everybody is a leader. Everybody's
Absolutely.
a leader.
Absolutely.
We all have the opportunity to lead and for others to follow. It's just how we choose to be a leader. And in my mind, leadership is the ability to identify a problem and step in and help make a change. And I know the list goes on, but that's my overarching opinion. So, Rod, what are your thoughts on everybody being a leader and the opportunity to lead?
That's the mission of my life, is to let people know, to inform people and empower them to know that they all are already leaders. And so your premise is absolutely the same as mine. How we get people to that point is different for everybody. Mm-hmm. Everybody has a different backstory. And so approaching leadership in that confine is really individual. It has to be individualized with everyone. And it usually comes down to lack of self-esteem. Somebody has something in their background that says, well, other people can do that and I can't. And you can be taught to be a manager, right? You can learn anything. You can be taught to be a manager, but leadership takes what you're taught and it adds something extra. It's that something only you can put on it. It's your stamp. It's your spirit. It's your charisma. It's your drive. It's your vision. When you can stamp management with those things, then people will follow you. Mm-hmm. And you're not a leader unless people are following you. You're not a leader if you're a manager. A manager is dictating. He's the guy with the whip. You have to do that. A leader is somebody that people follow willingly because they want to. And everyone can do that. Everyone.
Well, and I appreciate you're lobbing it up for me right now, because I've got a few helpful hints how you become a leader or how you identify and be a better leader or be the leader that you're called to be. And feel free to expand on these. But the first thing, and again, just a reminder, if you're listening, we are all leaders. So get it out of your head right now. If you're driving down the road listening to this podcast, get it out of your head that you're not a leader, because you are. I'm sure that you can think back at some point in your life where you led and others follow, and maybe you've lost your way. So here's some reminders about how you can become a leader again, or you can be a better leader or be the leader that you've chosen to be. So in my opinion, first of all, what is your why? What is your why? For me, I talk about it all the time. It's my family and my kids, right? When I go into a situation, that's my first consideration, right? And you might say, well, what does that have to do with business? You're not even at home and your kids aren't even there. When I make decisions, I want to make decisions and lead a way that my kids would be proud, that I can give them a lesson, or they could hear about the lesson. They can hear about what I've done. I take no greater pleasure, and we're talking about the school that we teach at. Well, my kids happen to go to that school. I would get so much pleasure out of one of our students relaying to my kids that I'm doing a great job as a teacher, right? That means I'm leading, and they are explaining to my kids how I lead. But first and foremost, I got a few, but I'll let you comment on this. What is your why?
Absolutely. My why is to leave the world a better place. Honestly,
yeah.
I have accomplished anything and everything that I dreamed, wanted. I don't have any regrets. And I say all the time, any extra day I get at this point is a bonus for me.
Yeah.
So how I spend it isn't about going to get something and earn more or get another degree or start another business or, get another whatever award. That's all behind me. So everything that I do at this point is forward looking. What am I leaving behind? I'm legacy focused. My why is driven by legacy. And again, I want, just like you, I want my kids to be proud of me. And here's a little psychotherapy for us all right? The one thing I never got from my father before he died, and he was in his 80s, he never told me he was proud of me.
Wow.
And I had a lot of accomplishments. My father never told me he was proud of me. My mother, who's now 89, has never told me she's proud of me. Now, I know that they were, but they never said it. And I've spent my whole life making sure my kids knew how proud of them I was.
Right.
And so if they can turn that around, and my kids have told me, when my adult children have told me, I'm proud of you, Dad, it's making up for the lack that I didn't get from my own parents. So, and that's hard to talk about.
Sure.
I could get emotional on this subject, but I just want my children to be proud of me now because I never got it from my parents. And anyone else being proud of me, coworkers or people in the community, that doesn't matter to me. What matters to me are the people that I love and that know me. It's their opinion of me that matters. So I want to leave the world a better place. I want my great-great-great-grandchildren to be able to read in the history about things I did to move the needle for them, for a generation.
I feel like you're reading my notes, Rod. You must be reading my notes over here. We're not.
I'm sorry.
Everybody, we're not in the same room. We're actually in two parts of the city. My next point was, what breaks your heart? What breaks your heart? And so, I mean, literally, you just talked about that with your dad and your mom, and your leadership style, at least with your kids, is to lead in a way that they know that you're proud of them, unlike how your parents led you. And I'm sure that there was some heartbreak in there, as you just suggested. It's hard to talk about. For me, what breaks my heart is looking at families that are disjointed, where the dad is not prevalent in the family unit. He's busy working, or it's a divorce, or it's not even a marriage. All these roles that dads could play, and they're not. And that breaks my heart, right? And that's why it goes back to me, as I want to be the leader of my family and make my family proud of who I am as a leader. And by the way, if when you're listening to this, you go, well, what does leadership have to do with family? I'm talking about my version of leadership. You need to apply your version of leadership, or that what you're aspiring to be as a leader. That could be in work. Maybe what breaks your heart at work is that the training program isn't what it could be, and you want to lead a better training program. Maybe the profitability is not what it could be. Maybe you found something in your city that's missing an element that you can be an entrepreneur because it's breaking your heart. The first thing that comes to mind is, maybe it's a homeless shelter you want to build or something. There's something that you see that's missing. It's breaking your heart over, and you choose to lead to make a difference in that arena. So it's not just family, it's across the board, but find something that breaks your heart and you can lead others to fix that.
Wow. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm getting business ideas. As you're talking, I'm getting ideas about things that break my heart and how we could interject in that. And one of the things you said was training. And that's what we're doing now, is we're training people, because it breaks my heart that people are not tapping into their potential.
Sure.
They are not living up to their own greatness. And I know that everyone has that. And so we're training. And I think every training program I've ever been involved in lacks something. It lacks something. It can always be better. And it's that personal element. It's that unique touch of when souls collide, right? That's what makes training. That's what makes teaching. That's what makes learning happen. And the next thing, and I have to say this because you were talking about families, it breaks your heart that dads aren't there. Well, it breaks my heart too, because I remember a day when women used to be home and now they're not there.
Yeah.
And even if they, we've got two parents who aren't there now, not just one. And there has to be a leader. There has to be a head of something. There has to be a head of a household. And whether it's a patriarchy, right, the father, or whether it's a matriarchy with the mother, I'm going to propose something different that I just thought of, a marriageocracy. How about that? It can be a joint, united front. It doesn't have to be the father is the head or the mother is the head. It can be the marriage itself. If you got nothing else, hang on to the marriage and let that be your guiding force. So it's a team effort. It took more than one person to have kids, to have a family. So let's focus on the partnership.
Well, and what you're also talking about, Rod, is leading by example, and being a true leader is sometimes taking out the garbage or whatever that looks like. And I mean, literally taking out the garbage, right? Because you're leading by example so that the unit can be cohesive together, right? And you're right. Now we live in a time where oftentimes the husband and wife are working, and it takes a team. It's interesting. My wife picked up a big client a couple of weeks ago, and she says, "Well, I want to do this, and it's probably going to be time consuming." I said, "Look, we are behind you as a family. We're behind you. We'll do whatever it takes to get you over that initial hump, and whatever as you get started, we realize it's going to consume a lot of time." So I've found myself doing more dishes, doing more laundry, doing more, making the bed, all these things, without the help. But that's the role that we play in each other's lives. And I think that's what we're getting after. And look, apply this to anything. Okay.
Absolutely.
Apply it to work, apply it to your team. Maybe somebody's falling short because they're not feeling well, or they've got an injury, or they've got a different focus or a big project. Be willing to pick up the pieces and be that leader that people will follow. Rod, I've got 2 more bullet points on this that we'll get through.
Well, you better take it away, or I'll take it away.
Well, here's one, and it's so obvious, but yet it's not. And let me explain. Here it is. It starts with me and you. Starts with me and you, leadership. My explanation is, and I'm giving a speech in a couple of weeks at the Republican women's meeting that they have. And the speech is on school board and people's desire to get on school board, or they want to know more. And I'm totally giving away my speech. They don't even know. And if you're listening to this, act surprised when you get there and I speak. My speech is going to be on leadership instead of school board. And this is the key point of the entire reason for speaking on leadership. It starts with you and me. You've made it to this meeting, but here you are looking for me to fill a void that you're not willing to step up to, right? And I'll give you the simplest example of that to further my example is they've asked me to bring a list of open positions for school board seats. I'm happy to do it. You know this, we've talked about it. I'm happy to do that. But the reality is every single person in that room has the capacity to find out what seats are available in their areas to do that needs to be done. And that's what I mean. It starts with you and me. Be a leader, be willing to do a little bit of research, and I mean a little bit, and jump into the game, right? So I'm going to speak on leadership because it starts with you and me. So I'll let you take it from there for a minute.
Well, I think that's always the case. And I'm going to backtrack a little bit, wrap it into that. And you said we have to be willing to step up and help other people out. That's true. We have to be willing. But for a leader, it's not a willingness, it's an obligation. Mm-hmm. You are obligated. If you're a leader, you're obligated to do that extra. And it comes with its own reward. That's what people sometimes miss. They think, well, that's not my job. How many times do you hear that in different places? Well, that's not my job, or it's not my department. Well, guess what? Then you're never going to be the leader you are meant to be, because it is your job. Everything's your job. Everything, every problem that's in front of you, it's your job to help solve it. Whatever it is, if it's dishes, if it's vacuuming, if it's making the bed, if it's getting the kids ready for school, if it's picking them up, if it's doing extra at work, if there's garbage on the lot, if there are weeds in the front, it's your obligation to do that. And it does start with you and me. And we have to hold each other. This is my big thing on leadership. We have to be accountable to each other for that. Without accountability, it doesn't matter, because people will just keep not doing it. Someone has to be accountable. It starts with the leader.
I just added a note, simplest of notes, inspire. And I believe that that's my intent behind the speech I'm going to give about leadership, is to inspire those people in the room, their inner leader, to step up. And this is my final point. Leaders will answer the call. Leaders will answer the call. And what's interesting about that is that's implying that there's people other than leaders. But if you think about what I said when I opened this, we're all leaders. Right. We're all leaders. So what I'm implying here is that leaders will answer the call. Everybody's a leader. You can also answer the call and be called a leader after doing that.
Right. And I'll tell you, because a lot of people, Jim, haven't answered the call, other less qualified people have been forced to step up. Mm-hmm. And so that's, that adage, and I don't know which of our founding fathers said it, we're going to get the government we deserve. And It's because people aren't stepping into the roles they should. And so someone else steps in, and that someone else may not have the talent. They may not have the background. They may not have the education. They may not have the passion. They may not have the why that you have. And that's why they're doing a crappy job. Mm-hmm. That's why they don't represent us, because they're representing themselves and their values, not ours, because we didn't step up. Well, leadership is stepping up.
Yeah. And I want to encourage people to step up and answer the call, because you have it in you. It's there. You just need to pull it out, find some encouragement, find some supporting factors, find your reason, find what breaks your heart, find your why. Because, interesting thought, we like to bitch and complain about, the restaurant in town that offers terrible service and the food's just okay, but we keep going back. Well, if we know so much, let's start our own restaurant. Answer the call. Maybe that's not your call, but the point is we all find problematic areas that we would rather complain about than fix, although we might have the ability to fix and make it better. So this is your wake-up call. You are a leader. You do have the ability, and leaders do answer the call. By the way, if you need some help with that, please consider jumping into the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate. If you break it down, it's $25 a week for at least an hour of commitment from us to help you answer that call to be a leader. And is that a selfless plug? No, it's not selfless. It's helpful. We have helped people. Interesting thing I posted on my Instagram today, Rod. Somebody, actually it was my LinkedIn. Somebody asked me yesterday, what do you do for a living, Jim? I'm going to wrap with this, by the way. I went into this, well, I'm a business consultant and I do this and do that. The reality is, Rod, for the last 5 years, what I have done for a living is help people. Right. And the more people I can help, the more excited I become, the more fulfilled I am in what I'm doing, the more driven I am to continue to do it. So please allow me to help you in what you're trying to do. So find me at Young Entrepreneur Syndicate. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, find me on the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate as well. You just you simplified my mission statement, my personal mission statement, to 2 words. Mine is what I get paid to do is empower ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary things. But what is that? Helping people.
Yeah.
That's it. You got it down to 2 words, and I always like to cut it down, but I'll leave it as it is because I've got it posted in several places. But yeah, we're here to help you. If you're listening to this, if you're watching this on YouTube, we are here to help you. And we have all kinds of resources and connections and networks and tools to help you. So please plug in.
Yeah, thank you. And this has been the Young Entrepreneurs Syndicate podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, share this if you like it. Make a comment on the YouTube channel. These things help us get a little bit more visibility out there. So it is meaningful. If you can take just 10 seconds to rate us, thumbs up, whatever that looks like, share it with a friend. Thanks for tuning in. We hope to see you on Monday nights during our Zoom calls. And remember, we have tons of resources to help you on the youngentrepreneurs syndicate.com. Rod, I'll talk to you later on.
All right. Thanks, Jim. See y'all.